Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. The meeting will be starting shortly. While we wait, let's learn more about Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
Audience, Chair and members of the audience, welcome to our April meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Because there are new names and because I will butcher your names, I'm going to ask that everyone just will go from left to right, and if everyone could introduce themselves.
Laura Montagno.
Teresa Page.
David Mursky.
Kevin Baum, Zoning Chair.
Esther Olson-Murphy.
Laura Davies.
So we have No public hearings tonight. We do have the Riverwoods request for rehearing, and then we have our approval of the January 23rd and March 21st minutes. I don't know whether new members are aware, so this would be, it's a public meeting, not a public hearing, so we will discuss and deliberate on the request, but there's no comments from the public. And so I guess it sounds like everyone has had a chance to review the request, and I would open it up to any discussion or questions. I would just remind everyone of the scope of the review, which is laid out in the request, but as a reminder, this is not a new hearing. This is just to determine whether were errors of law made or new information not available at the time of the hearing to be considered. So would anyone like to begin discussion? You mentioned you had some questions.
Yeah, I just had a kind of a clarifying question. Since I wasn't around to hear the December meeting, is the intent to build a new building or at Riverwoods for the facility, or is it they're moving everything to an existing building?
It would be, my understanding is it's a new building that is separate from what's existing there now. It would be consolidate and be in a new building.
Okay.
Which we haven't seen a site plan. We don't know exactly where or exactly how it would be done, but this is regarding their use. So
that's
not really relevant that we need to know that, but that's sort of our understanding is that it will be a new building.
Okay.
Yes.
On the Ridge campus.
On the Ridge campus. And beyond that, no determinations have been made, and that they are not in planning yet. So.
Okay.
So any other, I guess, initial questions or discussion on the questions before us?
I mean, I read the motion for rehearing, and I take issue with quite a few of the characterizations of how things are and some of the information in it, which I could go through if you want. Is that?
Well, I wonder if it might make sense to deal with one of the last points in the request, which was the procedural question of whether, we could proceed with a quorum. That's certainly allowable, with the option to continue to the next hearing. One question I had, and I think Attorney Summers included in her materials the powers of the zoning board. And within that, there's one item that I kind of had a question about, but I think it's maybe a threshold to the other issues, which is the concurring vote of any 3 members of the board shall be necessary to take any action on a matter on which is required to pass. So I'm curious whether the vote needed 3 concurring.
It's needed 3 concurring in order to pass.
Okay.
And so 3 members is a quorum. The reason that we generally allow applicants to continue, if we generally do if there's less than a full board, but certainly when there's 3, is that you need a unanimous vote. It's a difficult threshold.
Okay.
I do think it's an interesting point that it sort of addresses it backwards, but it might be worth discussing now, which is, I don't personally believe there was any error of law. I mean, the applicant went forward voluntarily with 3 members, which is a quorum. That said, I there is a reason why we let members continue. I don't think we have a legal, I don't think it's an error. I don't think it's an
Okay.
appealable error.
Yep.
With that said, this is how I read the motion, was not to say that it was an appealable error, but to say that it put them at a disadvantage. And I do think these are special circumstances where this is not like a case where we had 3 members, they voted to go forward. This application lingered for
6 months.
For 6 months.
Yeah.
And then they finally went forward voluntarily, yes, but at some point I do understand that puts the applicant in a difficult position. I think it's an interesting question: does that justify rehearing? Is the fact that having a full board, does would provide the applicant with, I guess, or provide this board with a broader view, more voices. I think it's an interesting question. I don't think it's a legal obligation, but I think it's a fair consideration for us in deciding whether or not we think rehearing is justified.
But not a due process error.
I don't believe it's a due process error. No.
So can I just ask a point of clarification? So you're saying to approve it requires 3, but to deny it does not require 3?
That is correct.
Okay. And from what I'm reading here is that if there isn't a full, if there's not a full board, it will not be grounds for rehearing an appeal unless there's other reasons to do so, is what I'm reading here. So that can't be the sole reason. If it was denied, that can't be the sole reason.
I agree. And what are you reading from? That's from the...
This is from the state.
The state guidance.
Yeah, the state guidelines, yeah.
Is it a certain number or letter?
It's not a statute. So that's
Yeah.
what was the OEP zoning board
Right.
Yeah.
guidance, which is now, I don't even know what it's not OEP
It's
anymore.
under, it looks like it's under RSA 674-33, powers of the zoning board of adjustment.
Yeah.
And then it's in that section, the same area that you saw
Yeah,
too.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, it is in the...
Yeah, it's just in the explanation of the concurring vote of any 3 members of the board shall be necessary to take any action on any matter on which it is required to pass. And then it was just part of the explanation.
Got it.
In here.
Okay. I didn't think that was part of it. Right. So that the statutory piece is the concurring vote of any 3 members.
Right.
The rest is the
Right.
explanation. Yeah.
If the applicant chooses to proceed with the hearing, he or she should be advised that a hearing before 3 or 4 members' boards will not be grounds for rehearing in the event the application is denied. So that can't solely be the reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's right. I mean, that is not statutory, but I think that's right. And the applicant did go forward with that understanding.
I'd like to hear from the 3 people who voted their feelings about whether there was an error.
I'm going to
Not feelings, sorry.
Yeah.
Their opinion, their view. Feel no.
You want me to go?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Okay, so I guess under evidence submitted on page 2, the ordinance was intended to provide health care in the same locality as the residences and amenities and not across town. That's actually not stated anywhere that it doesn't have to be across town. The definition of elderly congregate care facility says its primary feature is the provision of lifetime supportive services at each stage of a senior's life. And the facility is intended for a person 55 or older, which provides on-site nursing home facilities as licensed by the state of New Hampshire. So it's quite specific that it does need to be on-site, and that characterization is the applicant's, not the zoning ordinances.
I actually took the time to look up those 2 words. I looked up facility and I looked up the word locality just to see what the difference between those 2 words are. And facility is a building. That is the definition. And a locality is surrounding nearby region. So that's those are two very different terms than what Laura said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
To be clear, I didn't read that as a claim I read that as advocacy.
I did too.
Statement.
I'm just saying that, it's part of saying that we erred, and I'm saying this is the basis for why we don't agree with that. So the essential character of the locality and abutting residential area would not be altered because the health care will still be available to residents within the Riverwoods community. I think the essential character of the neighborhood will be altered by the construction of an entirely new building that would be not residences necessarily, but a healthcare facility with a lot of staff coming and going and so forth, and would be, I'm assuming by necessity, closer to the public the entrance off of Route 111. So that would have some influence on the essential character of the neighborhood.
Even Riverwoods as a neighborhood in itself, it's going to impact that.
Yes, and within Riverwoods. So.
One thing I did in this, I saw this again and reminded in the minutes. The ordinance does not require that it be attached. They are currently attached, so a new facility on the ridge could be constructed by right as long as they go through.
Yeah, it says on-site nursing, so that's, I think, the only reference I could find to how close it needs to be.
Right.
Yeah.
I read that as being on property, not an attached to other buildings. So I just do want to clarify in terms of constructing a new building and the effect that may have. Riverwoods does have the right to do that. The question is whether they can serve their other campuses with that building.
Right, but I think the assertion that it doesn't change the essential character of the neighborhood is, I disagree with that. I think it would change the essential character of the neighborhood.
Certainly there would be more use, but.
And just, the centralized care at the Ridge is central to all three campuses, and that would be true, but it's across Route 111 from the Woods and then down a street, and Route 111 has, I just looked it up real quick, 5,900 annual average daily traffic count. So,
It's a busy road they have to.
Yeah, it's not, that central. So, I guess on item J, it mentions additional beds will be used to serve new independent apartments and as a small cushion, and I think the discussion of how many or where new independent apartments was not made clear to me anyway. I didn't really understand, and I think that was intentional, what the plan was for the new independent units. I think that item K, a degree of discomfort was expressed by a small number of residents regarding the change in location. I think it was not a degree of discomfort. I think it was opposition, and it was pretty articulate, and there was enough of it. There was significant testimony and letters sent, and not a petition written by an unknown person, but actual letters signed by individuals. So, I think that saying that it's not a detriment or a loss is advocacy again. I do recognize that the contracts between the residents and Riverwoods is not our jurisdiction. And I know we talked about the contracts a little bit, but my concern regarding substantial justice was that they are individuals that are part of the community that would be negatively impacted by the approval of this application. And that was at least my primary concern, not whether or not the contract states this or that. So I guess the other thing I would say is that it mentions several places that the facilities are adjacent to each other, and again, I looked up the word adjacent, and it means next to, or bordering, or with a common point of contact. So these are not adjacent properties, they are in the same neighborhood.
We should probably talk about that as well, because two are.
Two are, absolutely.
And I do want to, and I don't want to cut you off, but I do want to get into that question, because we denied two variances. And I think we acknowledged that they were different, it was different effects, because two of those were, boulders and the ridge are adjacent.
Yes, they are.
And so.
It's a proper use of that word.
Yes, and so I do want to have that conversation. I'm happy to have it now or later, but is there did we, did we conflate the two, or did we heard the applications together, which I still think makes sense. I mean, for efficiency and the way it was presented by the applicant, that made sense. But I guess the question is, with respect to the boulders, do these same, failures to meet the criteria apply, given that they are adjacent?
Yes.
It is still not an on-site facility, but it is an adjacent.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection is that we denied the Woods application based on 2 points of the variance criteria, whereas the Boulders one was just 1 point. And I think the difference was that the two are truly adjacent to the ridge.
I think that's right. I mean, I don't know that it was as
clear as it could have been.
clear as it could have been. But
Yeah, it probably wasn't.
I do think that, in my recollection, is that the denial for the boulders was for hardship, and in part because there was
I thought it was substantial justice.
No,
No, was
I
it
think
hardship? Okay,
substantial
sorry.
justice. I think it was just hardship in that case.
Okay. Gosh,
We should probably
sorry.
look.
I should double check. I thought I went over this pretty carefully, but.
It was not that clear, but that was my recollection. And actually, I think that was the point. Well, I don't know that it was clear. I think that was Esther's.
Yeah, I think it was.
Esther's comment. I don't know that you agreed, Laura. So I shouldn't say that we made a determination there, because I think you two may have had
Actually,
differing opinions on that issue.
I think you made it right, Kevin. I think she.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the minutes.
Yeah.
Line 361, which is for her, which is Esther, the issue for the S application is more criteria 5, which is hardship. Ms. Olson Murphy asked if she could amend the motion. Ms. Davies said she supports 1 criteria to deny, that's all she needs.
Yes, we never actually amended it, we just,
Yeah.
So I felt that criteria, the substantial justice and the hardship were not met, and she felt just the hardship. That's what we're saying.
That was my,
Yep.
that was my understanding.
I think that is correct.
So.
So, I think that we did as a board, we articulated that the benefit to the, so regarding item 12 on page 7, stated that the board did not, never articulated that the applicant did not meet its burden regarding substantial benefit criteria, I think the board articulated that the benefit to the applicant would be outweighed by the harm to the existing residents who have written and testified to the value of 3 levels of care in a single campus or building. So I guess those are my main points that, I guess, and then also on page 9, item 4, likening Riverwoods to a college campus, in that, it's all one community, even though there's different campuses. And I guess the big thing I would say to that is that although they use the word campuses, it's not like a college because it's for elderly people, with many of whom have mobility issues, and distance really does matter to them.
Right.
So.
Well, the other thing I would say, and I actually agreed. I mean, I felt that, I thought that was a reasonable, not college, but to call it one campus. But I think there was conflicting testimony. I was swayed that there was enough crossover between the 3 campuses to treat it as one overall community, one overall site. But I do think that there was conflicting testimony to that point. I mean, the applicant indicated that there was, that there were certain events that everyone went to. I think the residents that spoke, several of them spoke to the contrary. So, again, I was swayed, but I think to the extent others weren't, there was evidence on either side. One thing I guess my additional comment, and like I said, I thought the applicant met the burden. I will say, in terms of the additional, in terms of the transportation plan, one of the criteria for overturning is that, or for rehearing, is that there was additional information not otherwise available. I think this could have been available, and I wish it had. I think one of the biggest issues that we ran into is that I think having more information would have helped the decision. The plans, and I think we articulated this, the plans didn't seem fully thought through. To some extent, I understand that's going to happen at site plan, but I think we were asked to do, to make a big decision with limited information. So, that I would just say that I don't know that my personal opinion is that the providing the transportation plan on its own is insufficient to meet the burden for rehearing. Although it's helpful, and I appreciate that the applicant is willing to to condition it should we grant. I guess
I don't, even the transportation plan, I feel much better having it, but it even still seems to be a little vague. This is what we'll try to do.
And it doesn't sound like it's even complete as I read the application.
It's a lot of work to do to get it finalized.
Agreed.
So, Esther, did you have, I guess I do want to hear from the other members as well, because we do have the benefit of having a full board, and it shouldn't be our decision. I think there's some value to having members that have some distance and weren't part of this and can look at it a little more impartially, chime in.
I don't think we made any gross errors in it. I think we've all discussed that second motion might have benefited from a little extra clarity to it, but I don't think it's not understandable either. They know where we're going. It was hard.
Right.
I think that's an important clarification. I'm glad we talked about it. I hadn't considered how vague that was, or not vague, but, not as well articulated as
some other ones we.
Yeah.
Yeah. David, did you have any?
Well, first of all, I think that the applicant's complaint that there wasn't enough discussion because of the number of members present is kind of negated by their application where they raised everything they wanted to raise, and I think they raised things that they can put into their appeal if they want to appeal this further to the Superior Court. I don't think they've shown any kind of due process violation, and I think that is actually also argument advocacy that's not really based on law, because they were told they had 30 days to appeal the board's decision, and they did, and they were told that they didn't have to go forward, and they did. And what it looks like is that they went forward thinking in reserve they were going to try to appeal this and put in some other things later, perhaps, that didn't get fully addressed because they didn't present it like this transportation plan. And I think when I see something like that come in at the last minute and it's not even attached to this appeal, and it wasn't argued or discussed at the in the hearing, I think putting it in that way and having it be somewhat vague is a way to not have it properly considered. And I also think having the board members say that they didn't feel like things were fully articulated at the time, and when the applicant has the burden and the ability to put forward everything they want to put forward, and also they have excellent counsel, I would say. One of the best that I've seen. And so I don't see that as contributing to error, but also the standard for determining justice that's given page 5, it actually shows that it was done properly, because it says it's not possible to set up rules that can measure or determine justice. Each case must be individually determined by board members, and that's what they did. And I don't see, and later on, there's mention of things that's saying that the board didn't understand balancing tests, and that's in paragraph 7, and that the board erred in relying exclusively on their opinions and personal feelings about a small group of residents. I don't think that's what they did. I think that you can characterize anytime board members are up here when they're saying, I think this, or in my view that, you can say it's opinion and personal feelings, but I don't feel that it was pointed out that way. And I thought that Chairman Baum, being on the opposite side of the majority decision, would have pointed out anything legally erroneous in the discussion, and I don't think he did that. And so, one thing that happens when you ask for a reconsideration, which is what this really is, it's not really pointing for an error to an error. It's asking for reconsideration of a carefully set up appeal that had months to decide when to go forward, and there were days they didn't go forward, which they could have, and they finally chose to go forward with that number of people there, and I think that's their decision. I don't think that should give them extra bites at the apple. And I don't see errors here, and I don't see people applying prejudicial views or, emotionally inappropriate views. I think when we're weighing substantial justice and that sort of thing, that the normal criteria. People use their perceptions, and they say what they've decided. And I believe legally, I don't know Esther as well because I haven't been on the board that long with her, but I know Laura and I know Kevin, and I know they know all of this. And I know that it's interesting that they came on opposite sides of this, which to me is a sign that it was a fair hearing and legally appropriate to me. That's my view.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Would either of you? All right.
Sure, yeah. So having clarification on the vote that's required, I don't think that proceeding just on a quorum is a basis for rehearing. I think also that the parking plan would have been nice to have, but it also doesn't constitute new evidence. It's not a change in the circumstances of the property that's happened since the hearing. It also is something that could have been available at the time, so I don't feel like I'm persuaded by a new evidence argument. I also think that based on, there was a lot of discussion, and there was a lot of discussion on both sides. I think that the criteria was addressed in a methodical way where each criteria was taken and a side was given for each, and that there's substantial enough evidence on the record for the decision that was made with the vote. And I think that, as board members, we give our interpretation or offer a personal experience or empathize with someone who's maybe living in a certain situation. But I think there were also tempered discussions that were made, and the board was really clear that they weren't making emotional decisions. I think it was a reasoned discussion, and so I'm also having difficulty finding an error that would rise to the level of rehearing.
Thank you.
I agree with both of them. The area where I struggled in their petition was on page 4, number 2, the evidence submitted by the applicant met the burden of proof establishing reasonableness. I think that, in the petition, it was an opportunity to articulate how this change was going to reduce hiring and retention issues, which it wasn't clearly articulated here, how this change would allow for them to address their hiring issues, and how that's going to allow for a more consistent, stable, high quality healthcare. This was an opportunity, I felt like, to articulate those things, and that wasn't articulated here. So that was in addition to, their comments. That was my additional note.
Thanks, Laura. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually, for the record, I did think that I understood those arguments. I think that some of the difficulty we had, that I don't think there was a lot of questioning, those statements. It seemed, they presented evidence, and it seemed consistent with some of what we've already seen. But I think the difficulty, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to be speaking for either of you, is applying that to the variance criteria. Mm-hmm. An operational, these operational statements that just.
Yeah. The operational statements, I do believe, there's a significant challenge of labor shortage in a lot of areas, and, I think we discussed that pretty clearly in the hearing, and so I'm not arguing that point at all. I just think that, the very heart of the purpose of this use being included as a special exception goes to including 3 levels of care, and it's in the definition, and it seems to be to me, I always understood it to be the central purpose of this exception. And to try to break that for a, operational matter, which is not insignificant, but it just seems like it's a big way to go.
And I think it's a good point that the ordinance is focused on the elderly care facility, and there are special considerations that go along with moving services away that don't exist when you have a college and it's able-bodied, youthful people that don't have the same consideration. The ordinance really isn't meant to cover the college aspect, so I think that's well taken. I also, there's a lot of discussion about it, that it's not a feature of the land, too, that it's the hardship isn't a characteristic of the property. It's really coming from a labor shortage, which...
It's an organizational issue, not a land issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the property has operated successfully for decades.
Right. And so I think even if the second motion could have had more detail, it really needs to meet all of the criteria. And I think a lot was focused on that the hardship really comes from the operation and not from the land, from the property itself.
We have some smart people here tonight. It's nice to have you guys on the board.
It's nice to be called smart.
No, this is great. It is. I thank you both for your additions. Actually, it's terrific. So with that, unless anyone has any further discussion, I would entertain a motion on the rehearing request.
Okay, so a motion would be to either accept or deny the request for rehearing.
Correct.
No? No, you want to do it?
No, I want to do it.
Since I was party to the original decision, I'll do it. I move that we deny the request for rehearing from Riverwoods Company of Exeter ZBA cases 22-15 and 22-16 for properties at 7 Riverwoods Drive and 5 Timber Lane. Is that sufficient?
Yes, I think for the purpose of the motion. Any second?
I second.
Okay. It would be, what I would like to have is some discussion of the, reasons for denial. I think we've discussed it, but I don't know if you're comfortable, Laura. Or anyone. I don't want to speak for people. I think we've discussed the reasons, and what I would, again, remind the board is the scope of review here, which is whether, the error of law was made, an error in the application of the, criteria to the request, whether there was new information that wasn't otherwise available, the change of circumstances, or some due process issue. What I have heard in discussion is that there was none.
I think we've agreed that we've reviewed the request for rehearing as well as our minutes and feel that we did not make an error, and that the new evidence presented is a transportation plan that could have been potentially available at the time that the decision was made, and that doesn't rise to the level of enough new evidence to challenge the decision. Is that anything I missed?
No, I don't think so. I think that's right. And the other piece was that there was agreement that I appreciate the applicant's position in having to go forward with 3 members, but it is a quorum. It is legally binding and is not per the state guidance and not reason on its own to rehear. With that, unless anyone has any further discussion, I would ask that we take a vote. Laura, you won't be voting, but
I vote in favor of the motion. Aye. Yeah.
Are you going to ask everyone? Aye.
we don't have to do a roll call, because.
Yeah, I'm in favor, I vote in favor of the motion denying the application to rehear, the motion to rehear.
Aye.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. So the motion is denied, and the applicant is aware of their rights and ability to appeal and time frame. Thank you, and thank you all for your that was a great discussion and careful consideration. That is all we have in terms of substantive matters. We do have meeting minutes for the January 23rd and March 21st minutes. Why don't we start with January 23rd?
It's the three of us again.
It is the three of us again. I mean, technically, you don't have to be here to vote on it, but typically what we've done in the past is folks that weren't here will generally abstain, although we often abstain, and then especially our more editorially minded folks like Bob find errors and they flag them anyway. But
Yeah, I mean, if you see an error,
yeah.
please do let us know, but
Yeah. No, I've watched the meeting a couple times, and I'll abstain from voting on it, but there's nothing that I saw that didn't match up on reading and watching it a few
And
times.
She found something.
Well, so I think if we look at lines 39, 40, in that range, Attorney Summers said that during the last meeting, the board asked whether the insurance commissioner review was required. I think we need to say Attorney Summers characterized Attorney McHugh's opinion as definitively indicating.
No, I think that's fair. Or we can say, they did say provided a letter. I mean,
his letter is part of the record and speaks for itself. She, of course, characterized it, a certain way, and I'm fine with that. But later on it goes on to say Attorney McHugh said it's not practical that it would be divided in the future, which is not. He didn't, I don't believe, comment on that in his letter.
No, I think that's right. I think that was Attorney Summers.
Yeah, so I just think that it got a little lost in there, that it was Attorney Summers speaking, and that Attorney McHugh's letter is part of the record, and he did indicate that it's.
It didn't need reviewed, but.
Didn't need to be reviewed by the insurance commissioner. I don't even know if he commented on the residence contract. I think that, I don't recall whether that was part of it.
That was part of it. I think that was the question. It was, and whether, I think the specific question was whether insurance department approval was needed. And I think my read and understanding was that, the contract allowed it and therefore it wasn't needed.
Okay.
They were connected. But,
Okay.
But I agree. This reads as if their attorney was present and spoke, and that isn't the case. So, do we just want to say before Attorney McHugh, Attorney...
On line 40, say.
Attorney Summers stated that?
Sure. And then in line 42, say Attorney Summers said it's not practical.
Yeah, I think that was Attorney Summers, not Attorney McHugh. I don't think he opined on that at all.
Yeah. I think that might be the only thing I saw that needed correcting.
One more thing that I found.
Oh, good.
What was that?
She found one more thing than I found.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
All right. So if there are no other, then can I have a motion to approve the January 23rd minutes as amended?
I move to approve the January 23rd, 2023 minutes as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I'll abstain from that.
And the rest
I will
abstain?
abstain.
Okay. And so next is the March 21st minutes. On this one, I actually am going to appoint, here I'm going to appoint Laura to vote. You get some action tonight, really exciting. And I will step off or abstain from a vote since I wasn't here for the meeting. I did review and nothing jumped out at me in terms of typos, but.
I have one thing that is kind of embarrassing, because I don't know if I'm right or not. On line 181, it says Miss Petito said.
I think that
I can't read, I think I said that.
I think you did too.
Okay, I feel better. Read on my-
I had that marked. Esther, question marks?
Yeah,
I thought
so
I'd check with
181
you.
says Miss Petito said she didn't see new evidence in the letter. That was me who said there was not, me as an Esther
Yes.
for the recording.
That is
So it's not, didn't see any new evidence. Thanks for the backup. Makes me feel,
You're not crazy.
it's hard to quite, was that me?
That was me.
These are long nights. Okay. Then, would someone like to make a motion to approve the March 21st minutes as amended?
I'm not voting since I wasn't there either, so
Okay.
just FYI.
Okay, I'll move to approve the minutes for the March 21st, 2023 meeting as amended.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And I think that is it. So with that, motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn. I can do that one.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.